I walked into Brent's office thinking I was about to get an update on the Apex campaign. We'd been busting on that account for 3 months straight, and I was the one who landed it in the first place. My deck, my pitch, my numbers. I thought I was getting a nod, maybe even a seat at the executive retreat table. Instead, he leaned back in his leather chair, swirled his coffee, and said, "We're curating the caliber of attendees. I don't think you fit the image." That was it. No lead up, no apology. I stood there frozen, nodded like a damn idiot. My jaw clenched so hard it popped, but I kept my face straight, neutral. I forced my hands to stay loose at my sides while my chest burned like I'd swallowed battery acid. I didn't say a word, just turned and walked out. Office was dead quiet. No one met my eyes. They didn't need to. I could feel it. They all heard. I passed Amanda from finance. She blinked hard and looked away like she hadn't just listened through the glass. Nate pretended to be typing. There weren't even keys under his fingers. Everyone was in on it, and nobody said a thing. I made it to my desk and sat down like my spine hadn't just snapped in half. The retreat was at Crimson Bay. That part stung the most. Brent said it like he picked some exclusive island no one could touch. What he didn't know, what I never told anyone at work, was that my dad built Crimson Bay from the ground up. Every dock, every suite, every stone in the garden. I'd been going there since I was 9, but I never used the name Sullivan here. Never once leaned on that connection. I wanted to earn my place like everyone else. I thought I had, but that moment, standing there with my work erased and my name dragged, flipped a switch. He didn't exclude me by accident. He didn't forget to put my name on the list. He chose not to, because I didn't kiss the ring, because I kept to myself, because I worked hard instead of sucking up over drinks. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. I sat at my desk for 10 more minutes, acting like I was busy. Then I stood up, walked into the break room, and poured myself a cup of burnt office coffee. I didn't drink it, just stood there gripping it with both hands, trying not to throw it against the wall. And as I walked back to my desk, my phone buzzed with an invite. Apex Strategy Sync. New leads. Brent had added both of his whiskey night buddies to the invite. I sat down and opened my laptop. My fingers didn't shake, but something in me was done waiting. I didn't even make it halfway through that Apex sync before closing my laptop. The 2 junior guys Brent had slapped onto the account. One started talking over me, and the other kept calling the brand Apexia. I'd been running circles around guys like this since grad school. That campaign was supposed to be mine. I built it from the ground up. Strategy, market segmentation, positioning, even down to the rollout phases. Brent nodded along in meetings, then stripped my name from the deck and presented it to the VP board like it was a group effort. He called it collaborative. What he meant was, mine now. This wasn't the first time. My pitches kept getting tweaked before they hit leadership. My name was always missing from the summary slides. Then came the assignments that started as solo wins and ended up with tag-alongs. Always his boys from happy hour. One of them literally asked me once if UX was a software, but I kept showing up. I didn't go crying to HR. I didn't name drop my last name. I took the hits and pushed forward. See, after my MBA, I had a clear choice. Take an exec track role with my dad's company or build something from scratch. I chose the second option, picked a mid-sized firm with solid growth potential, applied like a stranger, and took a mid-level marketing role that barely covered rent. I drove a 5-year-old truck, packed lunch most days, and pulled 60-hour weeks without complaint. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. That day after the retreat list dropped and the air around the office turned thick with fake coughs and avoidant eye contact, I got a message from Denise. She was our newest VP. Sharp, clean lines, no nonsense. I'd seen her tearing through metrics in boardroom meetings like she had something to prove, and she probably did. "Can you stop by?" her message said. I walked in, and she closed the door behind me. We didn't small talk. She got straight into Apex, said the numbers showed impressive retention, and the demo targeting was more precise than anything else on the board. We talked analytics, long-tail conversions, partner segmentation. It was the first time in months someone actually treated me like a strategist, not a plug-and-play deck monkey. She tilted her head at one point and said, "You're not going on the retreat?" "Nope." "Huh." That was all she said, but the tone was enough. She was surprised. Then she shifted the conversation to long-term positioning, where I saw myself, how I viewed Horizon's growth pipeline. It felt like a real talk, not a box check. After 20 minutes, she stood up and offered her hand. "Your instincts are solid. Keep pushing." I walked out of her office with a strange ache in my chest, something like pride mixed with regret. I'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen as capable, not just useful, not just convenient. I sat down at my desk, stared at the dock screensaver bouncing across my monitor, and thought about everything I'd given to this place. The late nights, the credit others took, the restraint it took not to throw Brent through a window some days. Then I pulled out my phone and opened a new message. "Need a favor? It's time I reminded some folks who I am, but on my terms." I hit send. A few seconds later, the bubble turned blue. I kept my phone face down the rest of the night, pretending I wasn't waiting for a response. Dad wasn't the type to jump, just because I asked. He'd raised me to stand on my own feet, even when it hurt. Still, I stayed awake longer than I wanted to admit, staring at the ceiling, replaying Brent's smirk in my head. The message came early the next morning. Just one line. "Interesting, someone from your company requested Crimson Bay personally." I read it twice. There was only one person dumb enough, and arrogant enough, to pull that move. Brent. I walked into the office with that text burning a hole in my pocket. The place buzzed with that fake energy people get when they think they're about to be rewarded. Half-dressed-up outfits, cologne you could smell from the elevator. Folks wanted to look executive for the all-hands, even though they didn't know why we were having one. I took my seat near the back. Brent strutted in like a man auditioning for his own biopic. He tapped the mic twice. "Team, I have a surprise." The screen behind him lit up with a slow pan of turquoise water and white sand. A couple gasped. Someone whispered, "No way." "Horizon's top performers," he said, drawing out the words like he was reading scripture, "will be spending next week at Crimson Bay." The room erupted. People clapped like he'd just delivered peace to the world. Brent held up his hand. "I happen to know the owner," he added, puffing his chest, "and he was gracious enough to work with me personally." I almost laughed. Instead, I watched the faces, wide eyes, eager grins, pure awe. Crimson Bay didn't even have a public website. It was reservation only, invitation only, money can't buy exclusive. And here was Brent, bragging like he built it with his bare hands. Then the attendee list popped up. My name wasn't on it. The applause faltered. People shifted in their seats. A couple glanced at me, then looked away fast like looking too long would burn them. Brent scanned the room, found my face, and gave me a tiny smirk, the kind of smirk a man gives when he thinks he's untouchable. That was the exact second I knew this wasn't about performance. It wasn't about image. It was a deliberate hit. He wanted me out of the way. He wanted me small. Meeting ended. People poured into the hallway, buzzing like they didn't know how to act. I didn't wait. I walked straight to Brent's office. He saw me coming and pushed his door wide open like he wanted an audience. "You need something?" he said, leaning back. "I want to understand the decision," I said. He shrugged. "You don't look the part. Retreats for people with executive polish." I felt the words hit, sharp and cold, but I didn't let anything show. "You're saying performance doesn't matter," I said. "I'm saying perception matters more," he answered. "You should think about that." I held his stare for a beat. He didn't blink. I didn't say another word to Brent, just turned and walked straight back to my desk, sat down, and pulled out my phone. "Let's do it, but on my terms." Sent. By the time I got home that night, I was past pissed and into surgical. I didn't even take off my shoes. I poured a glass of the good whiskey, the 20-year Glenlivet I had been saving for something big, sat down at the kitchen table, and opened my laptop. I started with emails, rewrites that magically removed my name, threads where I was left off on accident, meeting invites I never got. Next came the files, pitch decks stripped down and rebranded with Brent's talking points, campaigns I developed that were suddenly team efforts with zero mention of me. Then came the Apex folder. I opened the original strategy doc, time-stamped, authored by me. A week later, Brent's version, my slides rearranged, my notes reworded, and his name at the top. I dug deeper, reassignment notices that came with no warning, tasks yanked mid-project and handed to junior staff, his buddies, like I was just some temporary contractor instead of the one running point. I put it all in a shared drive, labeled every section with dates and notes, internal screenshots, client feedback, even Slack threads. By the time I was done, I had a digital file thicker than the damn employee handbook. Around midnight, I texted my dad again. I'll need the presidential villa, and silence. I want him to walk into it himself. He replied with a thumbs up. Classic. The next morning, Brent was on the warpath. He flagged me down by the break room. We've got 4 new campaigns, he said. I'm assigning them to you while we're gone. Big lift, tight deadlines. Of course, I said. Didn't blink. He gave me that smug little nod like he'd just delivered a fatal blow. Walked off sipping his protein shake. I pulled up the projects. All last-minute chaos, minimal briefings, no support. A full plate designed to bury me, while he sipped cocktails and played Emperor. Then Denise ghosted. She stopped replying to my messages, canceled a meeting we'd scheduled. I passed her in the hallway. She kept walking. No eye contact. She'd made her choice. I didn't show it, not at work. I stayed professional, nailed the decks, hit the deadlines, smiled when people walked by like nothing was off. But every hour, every spreadsheet, every late night, I was counting down. 6 days. Brent even cracked a joke during a team call, something about how he'd try not to get too tan while we held the fort. I laughed with the rest of them, but my eyes didn't. That final night before the retreat, I pulled up the shared file one more time, double-checked every folder, added one last note at the top, presented without polish, just facts. Then I shut the laptop, drained the last of the whiskey, and leaned back in my chair. Brent thought he was walking into a vacation. He had no idea whose island it really was. I was wheels up just after sunrise, watching the clouds burn off from the leather seat of my dad's jet. No co-workers, no Brent. Just me, a black duffel, and the plan. We touched down on the private airstrip like silk. Carlos was already waiting at the dock in his usual navy blazer, waving like I'd never left. He gave me a hug so tight my ribs popped. "Been too long, Mr. Sullivan," he said, grinning like he'd won the lottery. "You look different, feel different," I told him. We walked the grounds together, over the stone footbridge, past the garden suites, through the east courtyard. The place looked better than I remembered. Ocean smelled sharper, wind felt cleaner. Carlos tapped the front of the guest ledger with his knuckle. "We doing the full welcome?" I nodded. "At exactly 2:07. I want Brent standing right there, in the middle of that rug, when it hits." He laughed and pointed at the marble tile. "That's the power spot. They'll all be facing you." We mapped the lobby from angles, where I'd stand, where he'd announce, how the staff would pause just long enough to make it feel rehearsed, but not too rehearsed. Before lunch, I changed out of my usual button-down and chinos, swapped them for a crisp white linen shirt, light gray tailored pants, and my dad's old dive watch, the vintage one he wore when the first villa opened. Nothing flashy, just clean, quiet money. At 1:55 p.m., I was in position behind the concierge counter, just out of view. Carlos had eyes on the front entrance. "Boat just docked," he said into the earpiece. "They're strutting." I smiled. Didn't even bother pretending I wasn't enjoying this. At exactly 2:07 p.m., the doors opened. Brent walked in first, chest puffed like he owned the damn coastline. Behind him was the Horizon crew, 10 people in resort wear, laughing too loud, trying too hard. Couple junior staff stopped dead just taking it all in. One of them whispered, "This place is insane." Brent clapped his hands once. "Now this is how you reward excellence." He pointed at a mural near the bar. That was my idea, by the way. Told the designer to go with something abstract but earthy. I almost laughed. Then came the best part. Carlos stepped forward, hands clasped behind his back, cool as ever. "Welcome, everyone," he said. "This is a special visit, arranged personally by the owner's son." He turned, stepped aside, and looked right at me. "Mr. Sullivan, welcome back." I stepped out from behind the counter. Brent's jaw dropped so fast I thought it might crack tile. The color drained from his face like someone pulled the plug. Silence hit the lobby like a thunderclap. I looked around, let the moment land, then said with a smile, "Surprise?" A couple heads whipped between us, putting it together. Some eyes widened. One of the junior guys actually muttered, "Wait, what?" Brent opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. Nothing. Carlos clapped once. "Let's get everyone checked in. Drinks are waiting on the terrace." As the staff moved in, I strolled across the lobby like I'd been doing it my whole life, because I had. A few people nodded at me, confused but curious. Denise lingered at the back of the group, arms crossed, watching everything. Brent didn't move, didn't speak. I walked past him without a glance, let him sit in it. Carlos was waiting near the check-in desk with the resort tablet in hand. No clipboard, no concierge smile, just quiet understanding. He handed it to me like I already owned the place. Because technically, I did. Room assignments? He asked. I scrolled through the guest list. First name, Andrea. One of the junior staffers who always gave credit where it was due. She got the Coral Suite. Full ocean view, private balcony, spa access. Next was Marcus, another junior who had once covered for me in a pitch meeting without hesitation. He got the Lagoon Villa. Denise? She got a standard guest suite. Nothing insulting, but nothing special. Just enough to make her wonder. Then came Brent. I paused on his name for a second, then tapped Garden Room 6. No view, smallest square footage. No soaking tub. Just stone tiles and hummingbirds at sunrise. He could enjoy the flora while chewing on his ego. Carlos glanced over my shoulder and smirked. Fair distribution. I handed him the tablet. Let them feel the details. Dinner was on the West Terrace. Long table, white cloth, low lighting. Ocean breeze had just enough bite to keep the bugs down. People were relaxed, maybe a little unsure, but the wine softened things. I didn't sit with anyone. I moved like a host, checking plates, asking about allergies, talking up the chef. I told a story about how the executive chef once knocked out a power line, trying to cook a whole pig with a metal spit. Got a few laughs. I pointed out the local art along the walls, half of it curated by my dad himself. I explained the story behind the vineyard that produced the red they were sipping. Brent sat in the middle of the table, mostly quiet, mostly watching. He was starting to realize this trip wasn't for him. Halfway through dessert, he finally made his move. He stood up, walked over with fake ease, and said, "Mind if we talk?" I looked at my plate, then back up at him. "Sure." We stepped off to the side near the torch-lit garden path. He shoved his hands in his pockets, cleared his throat, and said, "Listen, I think maybe there were some, misunderstandings. I was just trying to protect you." I didn't blink. "From what?" "I mean, from assumptions. People treat you different when they know you've got connections." I tilted my head. "You mean when they know who I am?" He gave a weak laugh. "You know what I'm saying." "I do," I said. "You made it real clear what caliber you thought I was." He opened his mouth again, but I cut him off. "Let's not rewrite history," I said. "You stepped on my work, cut me out, mocked me in front of a whole office." He went quiet. I leaned in just slightly. "Now, you get to sit in it." His face twitched like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. He just nodded once, turned, and walked back toward the table like he'd aged 10 years in 5 minutes. I watched him go, then I turned and headed back into the main villa. I barely made it to the breakfast terrace before I heard the shuffle of polished shoes on stone. Dad walked in like he owned the ocean. Dark suit, no tie, sleeves rolled up just enough to remind people he built this place with his own 2 hands. No fanfare, no preamble, just presence. He walked straight toward the Horizon team. Didn't smile, didn't pause. Gave each of them a polite nod, a handshake. But every hand he shook came with a look that pinned people to the floor. When he got to Brent, he didn't even fake it. Just looked him up and down, held his hand a beat too long, then moved on without a word. Brent cleared his throat and took a sudden interest in his orange juice. Dad waited until everyone was seated in mid-bite before speaking. "Quick update on today's agenda," he said, loud enough for the entire terrace to hear. "You'll be helping our staff plant coral for the resort's reef restoration project." Mouths paused mid-chew. Brent looked up like someone had slapped him with a raw fish. Dad continued, calm as ever. "We've been running this project for over 20 years. Corporate guests usually don't get invited to help, but we're making an exception." He waved a hand, and a staff member rolled in a standing display board. Photos clicked into place one by one, coral beds, underwater shots, volunteers in wet suits. Then came the old ones. There was me, 15 years ago, standing knee-deep in salt water, hair matted to my forehead, holding 2 chunks of living coral like they were gold bars. Another shot had me on a skiff boat, drilling mounts into reef rock under Carlos's supervision. Someone at the table whispered, "That's him?" Another said, "Holy shit, he's been here forever." And just like that, I wasn't just the rich kid who hijacked a vacation. I was part of the damn foundation. Brent sat stiff as a statue off to the side, fork untouched, lips tight. His eye, all of it. His fingers finally closed around the folder. His eyes didn't meet mine. I added, "This could go to the board." His shoulders twitched. "Or," I said, leaning in slightly, "you can fix what you broke. Quietly, cleanly. The choice is yours." He opened the envelope, skimmed a few pages, and I watched the blood drain from his face 1 inch at a time. The corner of his lip twitched like he wanted to argue, but nothing came out. He nodded once, not out of respect, out of defeat. His kingdom was gone, and he knew it. I left him sitting there, envelope in hand, surrounded by people finally seeing him for what he was, and me for what I'd always been. Then I walked back to my seat. That night at the farewell dinner, I stood up just before dessert hit the table. No spotlight, no microphone. Just raised my glass and waited for the room to quiet down. "Appreciate you all being here," I started, "especially those of you who didn't know what you were walking into." A couple people chuckled. Most just watched, curious. I kept my background quiet on purpose. Not coffee runs. That woke a few people up. Even Denise sat forward. "We're also revising promotion guidelines, clear benchmarks, no more secret handshakes, no more bar buddies getting fast-tracked. You hit the numbers, you move, period." Nobody clapped right away. I didn't expect them to. "But if you came here thinking this place was just about luxury," I added, "you missed the point. It's always been about building something real. That's where we're headed." Some folks clapped because they felt like they had to. A few actually meant it. I didn't care either way. Message delivered. 6 months later, Brent retired. For health reasons, no party, no tribute video, just a tight email and a 2-line announcement from HR. I took his office the next morning. Denise showed up 5 minutes early, tablet in hand, ready for the new playbook. I gave her real work. Tough accounts, product launches, territory research. She did fine, not flashy, but solid. I watched her closely. No shortcuts this time, no second chances. The office looked almost the same. Same desk, same windows, same awful ceiling vent that clicked when the AC kicked on. I didn't redecorate, didn't see the point. No leather chairs, no ego art. Just one thing on the bookshelf. A small coral sculpture from the Reef Restoration. Beside it, a framed photo of me and Dad from the first intern class. 12 kids in branded polos, all grinning like they'd made it to the moon. I didn't need a villa or a title to prove anything anymore. I'd already built mine. The intercom buzzed. "Your father's on line 1, wants to talk about next year's retreat." I picked up the phone without hesitation. "Tell him I've got some ideas.